So I'm relatively active in the community of Space Marine 2. I don't really watch videos because my fragile glass ego can't handle people being better than me, but I do stick around the Steam posts they make to see how the game is doing, and I'm excited to see what they do with the game. But one of the more recent posts at the time of making this video had this line: "You can pause and read it just to be sure I'm not a lying twat, or just take my whore mouth at my word." Basically, they're saying they don't want the Bulwark to be the de facto healing class because he's meant to be more of a tank rather than a healer. This perk was supposed to give him more health to play with while fighting hordes of enemies, but now Bulwark players kinda have to run this at higher difficulties or we run the risk of dying far more than if we didn't. And it's not like you're wrong for running any other perk in its place, but it is the meta and overall best option. Look, I love supportive perks for my team, and it's nice to play the healer while being a tank, but that's not what the game developers want for their game, so I think we should put our ideas out there. Thankfully, some people thought the same way I did, just add a healer class. So, let's talk about adding an Apothecary to Space Marine 2. But first, what is an Apothecary? For those of you who are new to Warhammer 40k, or just enjoy the game, or you're letting YouTube feed whatever it wants down your gullet even though you have no clue what I'm talking about, an Apothecary is a battlefield medic. Their job is to patrol a battlefield helping out their fallen battle brothers. Even with their advanced healing, they still need a doctor from time to time, or if they're split in half, a high-speed piston to their temple would be preferable. And since this is Grimdark, you know my boy is that the Apothecary can hook you up with a one-way trip to the Emperor. After popping a Space Marine's brains out the other side of their skull, their next job is to harvest a stuff called Gene Seed, which is a lot more lore to it than you'd think, but it's basically really important. Like, this isn't your grandpa's ashes. Gene Seed is used to create more Space Marines, meaning that if they're destroyed, they lose an entire line of Gene Seed. In the lore, this is one of the most important jobs you can have because Gene Seed is in limited supply and it's passed down brother to brother. So basically, apothecaries don't fuck around with their job. Now that is an insanely reduced version of the lore because I'm just trying to set a baseline of what an apothecary is, what their job is, and why they are so important to 40k lore. As some of you might have guessed, there are a few good in-lore reasons and a few out-of-lore reasons to add a character like this to the game. Starting with the in-lore reasons, the apothecaries take on the most precarious of missions to fetch the gene seed of dead battle brothers. They will go through hell and back just to retrieve one brother's gene seed, and I think it makes complete sense that they would go on a dangerous, covert sabotage missions behind enemy lines or fight a big-ass monster from the depths of my incognito search history to find an apothecary ready to heal and fight for his battle brothers. For in-game reasons, it's pretty simple. They don't want any of our classes now to be the healer class, but that's the problem. We kinda need one for the game to help with the harder difficulties. The main way they increase the difficulty in the game is add more damage from the enemies, add more terminus enemies, and have less medical syringes overall. With those being their main way of increasing the difficulty, there needs to be a healer, or it's going to get exponentially harder since one mistake from a teammate can wipe out your entire team. Now, do I think the apothecary should be strong? Fuck no! He's going to be a healer, so the team needs to be overall weaker, but with more survivability and more sustainability. We need to make sure that he's bringing down the team's effectiveness enough that they're not just slamming through enemies while having a ton of healing, but he's also fun to play with and fun to play. Now fellas, this is going to get into complete theory crafting. I mean, this whole video is theory crafting, but this is where it gets really into the brush and like bushes of theory crafting, okay? So, now this is going to be added, at least from what I know, so this is just me spitting things into the wind at my ideas of how we could fix this issue that the game developers have. So let's talk about how to balance this beefy boy so he's not so beefy. I'd like to start off with keeping his health and shield generally low. I'd say give him about 80% of the baseline health, and 2 or even 1 armor chunk. I don't think a character as strong as this should be a tank, and should be fearful to walk up without the right timing and build. But for this generally low health, I think his main ability should be really strong. What I think this ability should be, is to make you and your battle brothers stand still. This is to balance it so you can't just do it mid-fight, and to heal them to full. Or you can run to a down teammate and pick them up to full health. The cooldown I would say would be like 3 to 5 minutes considering how powerful it is to give someone full health. And with the lengths of those overall harder missions, you should be able to do it to your lower health teammate right before a fight and then do it to your next teammate the next fight. You could probably fiddle with the timing on this because that could be a little bit too strong now that I'm like recording this and thinking about it because you know you're going to be able to do that like one time before every single fight and that's kind of going to cut down on that difficulty slider a little bit. But again, this is theory crafting. I'm not a game designer. I don't really know how to balance games as good as these guys, so just take it with a grain of salt. But I do think we should have a longer timer just to punish an apothecary for using their ability willy-nilly. This isn't something that you could just use whenever the fuck you feel like it. You have to time it or else their teammates will die. And I would really like if the Ravener and the Lictor would have a higher priority on the Apothecary, because that is like their job. They are the assassins. They should be trying to assassinate the designated healer. I'll make a video sometime probably about the hive mind and how I wish it was a little bit more intelligent rather than just going after the closest enemy, because I would really love if the hive mind was actually intelligent and had priorities. Like the Lictors would target lower health teammates and stuff like that. Maybe they do that, but I haven't noticed it. But I would really like the Ravener and the Lictor to prioritize the healer and the heart of the squad. I do have 5 cool ideas for perks. One of them I just came up with, which would be like you do more damage to Raveners and Lictors or something. Just something basic so you can have like a basic big ass stat boost because you're only prioritizing those two. So you'd get like a 50% damage boost on those specific things. So if you play really well, you can be like the prioritized Lictor killer. I'd call that one like the Anvil of War because you got forged into a Lictor killer because they come after you so often. I'd call this next one the Gene Savior or something like that, making it so if a teammate dies, you can go up to their corpse and after a length of 10 to 20 seconds, you can extract their Gene Seed. It would take the slot of an Undying Totem and it would be a weaker XP boost than the one that's already in the game, but it would be really cool to have a support class that can help you with the actual farming in the game. I also thought of something that I would call the Apothecary's Fortitude. It would heal you for about 7% of what you've healed a teammate. I'm trying to think of ones that are basically like just stat boost because a lot of the perks in the game are like that and you need to have a lot of those so it doesn't feel like this is like the favorite class. I have an idea for a signature which would be called a Doctor's Duty, being a subclass that gives you a massive damage resistance, and speed boost for 30 seconds or so after your teammate goes down. I'm thinking like a 7 to 10 minute long cooldown, but it would give you a massive power boost just so you can help your teammate that just went on the ground. Basically mirroring the Apothecary in the 40k lore. This one would change the character and it'd probably be another like signature that would change out a lot of the character, but it would still be like a supportive role, where it'd basically be, instead of giving your teammates health, you'd give them more damage resist or more combat power. So instead of healing them after a big fight, you instead pump them full of stimulants for the next big fight, making it so they can rely off of contested health instead of whatever you could give them. I've already said it, but I'm no balancer, and I'm not the best at it, and it's probably not a great idea, but it sounds like a fun alternative to the Apothecary just being the healer, because he's not. He's supposed to be another class that's supportive, not just a healer. Here's a signature call to action to comment on my video, because I totally don't want you guys to interact with the video so I can get more views, but in all honesty, I do like hearing from you guys. I do like hearing your criticisms and everything about it, so please, if you guys can, comment like any perk ideas you came up with while watching this video, because I would love to hear about more perk ideas. We're not worried about balancing, we're just spitting ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks, so don't worry about that, just tell me what you think. And finally, I think this weapon roster should have a very simple and very dull appeal. Canonically, apothecaries don't tend to use bigger weapons than a bolt pistol, so let's keep it that way. I think the apothecary should have 2 pistols and 2 melee weapons, the bolter pistol and the heavy bolter pistol, with the chainsword and the combat knife. I think we should have another class that uses the heavy bolter pistol, especially one that's going to be in the back lines, specifically targeted by a Lictor and a Ravener and shit like that. So I think we should give them something that does a little bit more damage than the average pistol. But I'm open to the Volkite pistol being added to the roster too, because it makes sense. Most of the time, apothecaries run chainswords anyway, but giving them a combat knife doesn't seem too out of the realm of possibilities. And it'd be pretty cool to have them be able to combat with Lictors and stuff, you know, a lot of those ones that would duel you. And just give them the basic bitch option of the bolt pistol, because who doesn't like a good old bolt pistol? In essence, if we ever got a new class and it happened to be the apothecary, I think we should make it generally weaker in terms of base stats and weapons, but it should have strong abilities in the game and be kept afloat by his team and the perks he uses. I want him to feel like a mastermind controlling the flow of battles through his heals, perks, and buffs he gives to his team, while easily being one of the weakest classes in terms of straight up damage, so his teammates have to peel for him and protect him. I think our combat in this game boils down to everyone taking their own fight and then reconvening at the next checkpoint too often. I think this new support class would be the fix to both problems, making the Bulwark less of a support class and making it so the community bands together even more. And don't get me wrong, there's a few games where I'm like back to back with my team fighting off hordes of these Tyranids, and it's amazing, but they're getting fewer and farther between. Maybe it's because we're more reliant on our own skills rather than relying on each other or what have you, but it's becoming less and less about team cohesion and more about us relying on our own skills and just taking our own solo fights. But that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, please comment down what you think about the perks and what perks that you would enjoy in the game. And don't even limit it to just this like apothecary idea. Like they are talking about changing out a lot of the perks in the game, so I wonder what they might add. Maybe they'll just add more instead of taking away some, but I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys like, comment, and subscribe, or dislike and tell me why in the comments, blah blah blah. Have a great day.